Hello, welcome as always to the Daily Fantasy Cafe podcast, our cafe on air. I'm once again your host, Big Italy 42. As always, I'm going to go ahead and kick off things by talking about tonight's NBA slate. We got a nice 8-game slate of action for you here. I'm going to be focusing on both FanDuel and DraftKings for this, since it's not a huge slate. I'm going to give you a little bit of price differences between some plays, some guys I like better on certain sites rather than the other. And without further ado, let's go ahead and kick things off here talking about point guard. Chris Paul's a big story here. Got some x-rays on his knee after last night's game. Considered a game-time decision. Monitor his status closely tonight. This is a great game to be targeting, but at 10,700, Chris Paul's probably a guy that I will not be playing very much of due to the fact that he likely won't be 100%. I wouldn't be stunned to see if maybe he sees less minutes, maybe he sits out, but watch that moving forward the rest of the day here. You got your second overall option, obviously Stephen Curry. He's 10,000 on FanDuel, 9.5 on DraftKings. He's a guy that has immense upside. I'm not sure I'd be necessarily playing him in a cash game. We have seen Golden State blow out some inferior competition at times. Phoenix, when they're not clicking, they're pretty bad. They got crushed by the Spurs last week, so monitor this one. Only a 5.5 point spread, though, so Curry definitely an elite option at point guard. I don't necessarily think you have to play him if you're going with a single lineup, maybe a couple lineups. There's a ton of point guard value tonight I'll get to in a minute, but obviously a great play there, Stephen Curry. Moving down next, John Wall, a little bit too pricey for me, so I think he's a pass. I don't see him exceeding his value too much. Same with Tyreke Evans. I think he's in a fine spot. He could have himself a nice number, but looking at his price tag, 8.4 on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings, he is 7.3. Definitely playable on DraftKings. I think he's got some upside, but FanDuel, no thanks for me. Moving on down, next you've got Ricky Rubio, who's in a great spot. Even if Chris Paul plays, posted a triple-double against him last time out 3 games ago, so elite option there. He's got big upside. Not a big scorer, as you know, but steals the ball, assists, rebounds. He's had assists in the double digits pretty much every single game since he's been playing big minutes. I mean, you see 5 in a row and 6 of his last 8 games with at least 10 assists, including 15 last game out against Portland. So great tournament play there. Got some nice upside. I think he's got a pretty safe floor, too, playing right around 40 minutes. Next guy I want to highlight here is Ty Lawson. Once again, a little bit better of a play on DraftKings where he's 7K, 7.7 on FanDuel. But I think he's got great upside. Denver, as we know, still not a very good team. I know they're a 9-point favorite in this one, but if this game stays close, Ty Lawson has great upside. He's flirted with a triple-double a couple times recently, and if his shot's falling, he's definitely got legitimate 50-point upside in this one. Next, you've got Mo Williams. A little bit too pricey for me. I don't see a whole lot of profit potential with him. 7.4 FanDuel, 7.5 on DK. I think he's a fine play for cash, but I don't think I'll be going that route. Goran Dragic, as we know, questionable for this game. I err on the side of caution. I anticipate maybe he won't play. Maybe the Heat take it easy with him and ease him back, but still no official word on that. If he doesn't go, you're obviously going to get a bump to Mario Chalmers, who is 5.2K on FanDuel and on DraftKings. Very playable, 4.2K. Had a great game last time out off the bench, 34 minutes, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 steals. Obviously, you're not going to assume 4 steals every game, but Boston, a little careless with the ball at times, so I think that Chalmers is a nice play. Same with Tyler Johnson, 4.5 on FanDuel, and a great place to play him is on DraftKings, 3.5K, and even better is that you can get him at shooting guard on DraftKings, which you'll see in a minute, a pretty terrible position tonight. Not a lot of guys I'm a big fan of. And if nothing else, Tyler Johnson, 44 and 36 minutes his last 2. A lot of question marks with the Miami Heat, but it seems like right now he's getting minutes and he's contributing across the board. So great play. Absolutely love him on DraftKings tonight at 3.5. Next up, you've got Dennis Schroeder, 5K on FanDuel, 4.9 on DK. He's just been getting it done off the bench. I mean, he's getting a solid amount of minutes. He's producing at a similar level to Jeff Teague. Better point per dollar performer right now. 24, 28, 31, and 34 in his last 4 games. I think he's a nice cash game play. And big spread here, double digits for Atlanta. So maybe he gets a little extra run late. Marcus Smart, I think, is an okay play if you're looking for a cheap play. But I think there's better options. He's 5,000 on FanDuel, 4.5 on DK. Sean Livingston. You can call him the flavor of the week. You can call him whatever you'd like, but I absolutely love Sean Livingston right now. Last 4 games, 25, 27, 28, and 28 minutes. Over 27 fantasy points in 3 straights on FanDuel. And you got to like his price tag. 4.1 on FanDuel, 3.6 on DraftKings. And I think it's something that people have noted that they think he is getting a lot of garbage time points. And I don't think that's the case. He's been getting some run as the Warriors go small here. And at that price tag, I mean, he's been over 15 fantasy points, I believe, in 2 straight games in the first half. So definitely some upside there with Sean Livingston. And I think he's in a very fine spot tonight, especially on DraftKings at 3.6. Guy that I'll be playing quite a bit. One other guy you can look at, I don't love his price on FanDuel, $7K. Isaiah Thomas, he's playing really well. He's very streaky, but he's still getting right around 30 minutes, which is pretty much the downside with him. But 44.75 on DK last time out against Orlando in 30 minutes. So point per minute performer, he's tremendous. 6.3 on DK is a little bit easier to stomach. So that'll be the wrap up for point guard. Nice, tons of options there tonight. Shooting guard, not the case. Your top option looks like Eric Bledsoe, but he's a little bit pricey for me. You do love the game flow. These are the types of games where you target a guy like Eric Bledsoe, and it's a fine matchup. Klay Thompson, a pretty good defender, but he's going to be matched up also against Steph Curry. I mean, just this high pace. If this game stays close, Eric Bledsoe could have a huge game. 8.5 on FanDuel, and over on DraftKings, his price just a little bit better at 7.9K. So yet another player a little bit more playable there, but I think he has tremendous upside. I wouldn't use him in a cash game, though, at that price. Dwayne Wade, questionable, as every other Miami Heat player seemingly is today. 7.7 FanDuel, 7.2 on DK. I think he is the de facto number 1 dollar for dollar top option for me if Goran Dragic sits. If Dragic plays, Wade's more of a tournament play, but I think he's fine either way. Klay Thompson, 7.1 on FanDuel, 7,000 on DraftKings. Hasn't shown a lot of upside recently, but he should be a great cash game play here. And we know when he gets hot, he can really fill up the stat sheet. So get yourself some exposure there if you roll in multiple lineups, definitely. But I think he's a fine cash game play as well. Giannis Antetokounmpo, obviously only in play at shooting guard on FanDuel. He is a small forward on DraftKings, but 6,100 is a great price for him on FanDuel. It's starting to come down a little bit, so I like him. Pretty good deal. Next up, you got the Los Angeles Clippers shooting guards. We know Jamal Crawford's still out with an injury. Now Chris Paul, game time decision for tonight. JJ Redick has been a very popular play. You got to like this spot for him. He's playing solid amount of minutes. Played 44 against Minnesota 3 games ago. Just 22 fantasy points, so not a ton of upside, but a great cash game play. And if you want to look a little bit cheaper, Austin Rivers, 3,600 in this same game. 25, 26, and 31 minutes last 3 games. I think he's in a perfectly fine spot there. And listed as a point guard at minimum salary on DraftKings. So a little bit of flip there with Tyler Johnson, but a nice cheap option for you there, especially if Paul ends up sitting. He'll get some extra run, but I honestly think that he'll get plenty either way. Moving down past that, you've got Gary Neal has been shooting the ball really well recently. 36, 21, and 33 fantasy points his last 3 games. The last game, 27 real points in just 21 minutes against Portland. It's a fine matchup for him. He's 4.3 on FanDuel, and he's 3.9 on DraftKings. So I think he's a fine option. More of a tournament play for me. Not solidified in his minutes necessarily, but a guy that's definitely helping out on offense. A lot of those bigger minutes were due to Kevin Martin sitting out. So obviously be cautious there. But in a tournament, I think that he's got some nice upside around that price. If you want a nice cash game play, Tony Allen, 4.4 on FanDuel, 4,000 on DK, but he's a small forward. So keep that in mind. Rudy Gay, been absolutely on fire recently. Looking at his recent game logs, just tremendous. 50, 62.5 in his last 2 games. Playing huge minutes, taking a lot of shots. You don't love the matchup against Atlanta. You don't love the matchup against Damari Carroll, but at 7.7 on DK, you've got to have yourself some exposure to him with that big upside. FanDuel 8.4, a little bit pricey for me, but once again, multiple lineups, you're going to want some exposure there still. Next up, we've got Draymond Green, 8.3 on FanDuel, really expensive, but one of those guys who really contributes in every category. He gets run if the game gets out of hand, so I like him quite a bit. I prefer him a lot more on DraftKings, where unfortunately he's a power forward, not a small forward, but 7.2K for Draymond Green, I think, is a tremendous price in this matchup. So I'll be targeting him quite a bit there. Andrew Wiggins, 6.8K on both sites. Fine cash gameplay. Not a guy that I'm going to be paying up for very much. Not a ton of upside built in at that price there. Chris Middleton, 6.7 on FanDuel. 6,000 on DK, where he's a shooting guard. He and Antetokounmpo switch there. They flop, basically. And I think he's got elite upside. If you look at his recent game logs, he's been tremendous. His last game, over 40 fantasy points. In fact, 48.8 on DraftKings. 45.25 2 games ago against Denver. Not a tremendous floor. Right around 20 or 25 points, which is fine. But he's got a significant upside, up near 45 to 50 upside in fantasy points. So I think he's a great play. Looking down a little bit further, you've got PJ Tucker, old reliable there. 5.6 on FanDuel, 5.5 on DK. Don't expect a huge game out of him, but it's a good spot for him. I think he'll pay off his salary. Nice cash game play for you. Gerald Henderson's another interesting play. He's been playing really well recently. And 5K at shooting guard on DK. 5.5 on FanDuel. Listed as a small forward, but looking at his recent logs, 35.5, 23, 27, and 38 fantasy points. So nice cash game there, and maybe even a sneaky play in a tournament with a decent amount of upside. I mean, he's taken double-digit shots in 5 straight games. In fact, 11 or more in all those games. So decent amount of upside for him. Danilo Gallinari, once again, fine cash game play. Wilson Chandler, for me, a little bit more of a tournament play. Only 5.3 on DK is fine for me. Not a very safe floor, but 38 minutes against Houston. Shot 11 for 15, which he's obviously not going to do again, but 43.75 fantasy points. So he flashed his upside there. Got to like that spot for him against the awful Knicks. Not a lot of other options here at small forward. You've got Jeff Green's a fine cash game play. 4.9 on FanDuel, 4.8 on DraftKings. Putting up low 20s fantasy points just about every night right now. And if Luol Deng sits out once again, your obvious play at small forward is going to be, and you're going to hate to hear this, as opposed to years ago where it would have made sense, Michael Beasley. Last game, 38 minutes against Sacramento, 18.7 rebounds, a block, and 2 steals. He's 4.2 on FanDuel, 3.7 on DraftKings. Luol Deng sits. I will be playing a ton of Michael Beasley. Great value, huge upside at that price. Moving on next to power forward, where I don't have to tell you who the top option is. Anthony Davis, finally getting big shots, taking a lot of shots. 30, 21, and 21 over his last 3 games since returning from injury. And the guy is just tremendous. 81, 57, and 47 fantasy points on DraftKings over his last 3. He's near mortal lock for a double-double, barring an injury, foul trouble, something crazy tonight against Milwaukee, who doesn't defend bigs particularly well. I don't think he'll have any issue down low with anyone they throw at him. I think he's in line for a huge night. He's my top overall option at any position, and it isn't particularly close. You go down just a little bit here. You've got Pau Gasol, a little bit pricey for me in this matchup at 8.8. Zach Randolph, 7,100 on DraftKings, I think is a phenomenal play, especially for your cash games, maybe even in a tournament at that price. A little bit pricey for me on FanDuel. He's sitting at 8.2, so maybe go a different route there, but definitely on DraftKings, he makes for a great play. Kenneth Faried against the New York Knicks. I don't need to tell you. Anyone against the New York Knicks is a fine play. Like him quite a bit tonight, despite his struggles in the last game. 6.2 on FanDuel, 6.5 on DraftKings. I think he's in a fine spot tonight to have one of his patented double-doubles. Going down a little bit further, you've got Andrea Bargnani. 5.6K on both FanDuel and DraftKings. It pains me to say it, but the guy is still playing well. You take away that one dud he had against Sacramento, and he's been absolutely phenomenal each of these other games. 29 and 41 in his last 2 games. Skip that Sacramento game. 23, 52, and 30 fantasy points. There's not a lot of great mid-range options at power forward tonight. I will have a hefty share of Andrea Bargnani. Hard not to. Denver struggles against big men in the front court, and flashback to the old Andrea Bargnani, except he's actually relevant this time. I'm going to be playing some Andrea Bargnani. Not too ashamed to say so. You can look at Ersan Ilyasova. I don't like the spot for him, but You got him at 5K on DraftKings, a little bit better on FanDuel at 4.5K. I think he's in play. Brandon Bass, not chasing the huge game. I don't obviously ever anticipate him going 19, 17, and 5 with 8 offensive boards again. But he's playing a nice complement of minutes, 4.9 on DK, 5.3 on FanDuel. So if you want a cheap option, can't quite afford a Bargnani or a Farid, I don't mind Brandon Bass there. I'm not really dipping any lower into any of these guys, except if Alex Lynn sits out. Brandon Wright, who I kind of whiffed on last time, I thought that he would still see low 20s minutes. Played 30 minutes, 27 fantasy points. He's a power forward for 3,700 on DraftKings, so you get yourself a cheap exposure there. Obviously, he's a center on FanDuel at 4K. Only if Alex Lynn sits out. If Alex Lynn plays, do not play Brandon Wright. Not a big fan. And that's about it for power forward for me. Been searching for some deeper values. Not a whole lot there to be seen. Moving on to center, DeMarcus Cousins, despite a tough matchup, got to be your top option. He's got the highest upside. Once again, you don't like targeting players too much against Atlanta. Very good defensive team. Probably the best team in the NBA. But 9,700 on DraftKings is still very fair price for him. 57 and 54 in his last 2 games. He's playing big minutes. If they can keep this game close, Cousins could have a huge night, similar to an Anthony Davis type of line tonight. He's 10.8 on FanDuel, so that's a little bit much for me. My favorite center on the night, though, Al Jefferson, 8.4 on FanDuel, 7.6 on DK. And man, 7.7 on DK. And this guy has been tremendous recently. 46, 53, 33, 52 fantasy points his last 4 games. It's been absolutely tremendous. He's scoring the ball very well, which is the part of his game that was missing earlier this season when he was struggling with injuries. So 24, 23, 19, and 21 real points his last 4 games. Marcin Gortat, an above average defender, but Al Jefferson can get his shot up over anyone. Hopefully he can grab a couple boards as well. I think he's got nice upside. I think dollar for dollar, he's the best play at center tonight. On both sides, obviously a little bit better on DK, but I like him on both. Coming in at a close second here is Marc Gasol. 7,400 on DK, 77 on FanDuel. The guy can do it all. His last stat line against New Orleans, tremendous. 8 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 blocks, 3 steals. I mean, even when he's not scoring or grabbing a ton of rebounds, he's got significant upside. I like him quite a bit against the Chicago Bigs, who have struggled recently. And as we know, he's going to get big minutes. It's going to be a slow-paced game. So Marc Gasol, my favorite target there. And pretty fair price for him as well. A guy I already mentioned earlier on the opposite side, we got Marcin Gortat, 6.3 on DraftKings, 6.4 on FanDuel. The guy has a very safe floor, 25 or more, it looks like, in each of his last 8 games. So the upside that we saw in a couple of games wasn't something that had been there before, but seems like he's finally turning it around, and maybe he grabs some rebounds that Al Jefferson isn't getting while he's shooting those long jumpers. So I think he's a fine cash game play. I think you can play him in some tournaments as well. But I do prefer Al Jefferson or Marc Gasol. Going a little bit cheaper, this is a DraftKings special, assuming that he's completely healthy and he's going to see a full complement of minutes. Nikola Pekovic, 4,600 on DraftKings. I'm not playing him on FanDuel at 63. And even at 46, he's just a single bullet tournament guy for me. But I think he's in an okay spot. You don't love him against DeAndre Jordan, but he's not much of a rebounder anyway, more of a scoring center. So I don't think that the matchup against DeAndre Jordan hurts him too much. Got to like the high total there. If you're going cheaper, if Alex Lynn does play, I'm not touching him either. Coming off an ankle injury, no thanks for me. And that's going to be about it at center as well. Make sure you check out some great content we have at dailyfantasycafe.com. I will be back here again tomorrow with the Tuesday recap with Spencer Limbach once again. So thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.